Welcome to Double Fries No Slaw. It is March 13th. It's spring break week. That means absolutely nothing for Richie and I, who just get up and go to normal jobs every day. But spring break week for Florida State. We've got a bunch of spring football updates, talk about some other FSU athletic things. But before we get started, Richie, how you doing this weekend? What's going on?
Pretty good, man. Just took yesterday as a house day, just worked on everything. Today, we got this going on. Gonna go check out James Harden and Joel Embiid tonight. So, because I'm certainly not going to watch my last place Magic, but it'll be a fun time.
Have they been disappointing you this year? Are they tanking pretty good, or
They're
I don't really
disappointing
follow
that in bringing Marco Fultz back and starting to win a few games when I want that I want the best odds in the lottery to see if we can get someone. I feel like the Magic do that every year. That we just live in that world of hurt. Typically if we're not in the playoffs, we're 8-9 seeds, so we're not getting good draft picks. But I'm used to it as a Magic fan, but been here my whole life, so it's nothing new to me.
Couldn't be me. Well, it kind of is me this year, but most years it couldn't be me. What did you do this weekend? Did you do anything yesterday? Did you do anything crazy, or you just kind of like hung out, watched golf?
Yeah. I watched what little bit of golf they did have because the weather up in Sawgrass is not very conducive to playing right now. Today should be beautiful, actually. So a lot of players got screwed yesterday, but kind of took it easy and cleaned the house and not much going on. I did go meet you for my Garnet and Gold care package yesterday morning. So got some really nice stuff from them. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, no. I've seen a lot of stuff that they've got. We'll do like a more official like ad read later. But if you're watching this now, if you're already tuned in, they've got some really cool stuff that's been released. I love the vault stuff that they've got. If you use code No Slaw, NOSLAW, no space, you get 20% off. So we've got those really cool hats that I was posting yesterday on Twitter. You can get those for under $20 with the code. We don't get anything for that. Harlan was just asking me like, what's our, and I was like, nothing. We're just saving you guys money. So 20% off with code No Slaw. Go check out garnetandgold.com and get something after the show. Don't leave the show and go back. But we also had a giveaway winner. We'll talk about that later in the show. But let's jump into it. Double Fries No Slaw brought to you by Guthrie's in Tallahassee. You can visit both their locations at 1818 West Tennessee Street and 2550 North Monroe. They're expanding. I actually spoke with their owner just the other day. They've got some stores that are going to be popping up in different places. They just signed a pretty large contract for a certain number of stores that I'm not allowed to discuss or disclose, but it's a lot. And did you see there's a Raising Cane's going in right across the street?
I did.
So I texted
right across the street from it.
I texted that to their owner, and I was like, "Are you worried?" And he's like, "No, I love it. I love the competition. Bring them in." He was like, "I love to kick their, you know what." So shout out to OG. Shout out to all the imposters as well, trying to be like the OG. There's a part in Aladdin where the genie is coming out of the lamp, and he says something like, often imitated but never duplicated, or something like that. Like, I don't know. But so that's, shout out to the imposters. Shout out to the people that didn't think of something first and, want to be cool like the OGs. So shout out if you start a French fry podcast and you're an imposter too. So shout out after us. We're not, but like, if you steal our idea, then you're an imposter. So you're basically Raising Cane's. All right, let's get into it because I think people are tired of hearing me talk about Aladdin and French fries and everything else.
I was wondering where you're going there.
I don't know, man. Sometimes words just start coming out, and I don't really know where this is. Like that's an office joke. But all right, let's get started. Spring football has started. What are we, 4 or 5 practices in? We were talking with Brian McFadden the other day. This is kind of like what you put on the outline here. We're talking with Brian McFadden. Does this year just feel different to you? I mean, does it feel different than it has the last 3 years? I think going into Willie's year, we felt pretty good too. Willie's first year. But does this year feel different so far?
I think so. And it better, right? It's Mike Norvell's 3rd year. He's got a roster together. It's still not the typical Florida State roster we're used to that's going to compete for a chance to get to the College Football Playoff. But I'll say that the team looks different, even from a physical standpoint. It looks like, an actual college football team. Now, there's still a couple of people, players on the field that look like, probably not going to contribute. But, I think there's a bunch of walk-ons and stuff out there as well. But for the most part, especially among the offensive line, I look there and see this looks like a team that has some depth and some decent size to it. So much more so than, previous years we've seen. So it's exciting. The reports are tricky because, the media that can attend, there's a lot of things they cannot report on when they're there. So we're really trying to, read between the lines, but from the videos and the photos I've seen, the team, they definitely look like they can compete with pretty much anybody they play. Clemson's going to be tough, obviously, but every other team I think they can compete with from a physicality standpoint, and that's not been the case in recent years.
Yeah, and some of the media that does break those rules on what they're allowed to report on. So you just have to follow those outlets too. That way you can kind of find the inside scoop and let them deal with any repercussions later. So you just got to search a little harder, Richie, and you can find out those things that are off the record. Somewhat tongue in cheek. Nobody should be doing that stuff. But I agree. I think the team looks different. Again, it's just so early. Nobody's winning national championships or conference championships or even competing for divisions in March or April, but it does feel different. It feels like we have more certainty. We keep hammering home the point that Florida State returns the 11th most production in the country. 11 out of 130 teams is, not bad when you're just knocking on the door right there of a top 10 team as far as production returning goes, which is something that's very different than we've had in years past, where so many new faces year after year after year. You added some transfers and some different people in different rooms that you hope will enhance things. But the only room that is like completely different this year is the wide receiver room. And there are still some guys there that are that were here last year and competed last year on the team. Wilson, Helton, they were guys, McLean. Is Keyshawn Helton's not still here? Did I just say that? Or is he?
With COVID years, I don't know. You're gonna have seventh-year players some places across the country.
Yeah, no,
but I think Hilton's moved on.
Yeah, no, I meant McLean. I don't know why I said Helton, but so anyway, no, I think hold on. Now I'm very he's a redshirt senior. No, he's here. So I do. I don't know what I'm doing here, bro, but yeah, I mean, I think you just have more certainty on who's around, what different rooms look like. Obviously, the wide receiver room could be kind of wild, and who knows what that will look like with taking 4 transfers. But thank you, Harlan. But there's just so much more certainty. Obviously, we don't know who's on the roster and who's not. Thank God for Harlan correcting us on the back end of this. But I do feel like that's a big help. Most important position, we talked about this on the spaces. There's been a lot of praise for Rodemaker and Duffy. I don't know how much. I'm a little skeptical there.
So I'm trying to. I have a few outlets that I really trust.
For a QB2. Like, we know Jordan's the guy. Let me just back up. We know Jordan's the guy.
Yeah, and Jordan.
I'm skeptical of the praise.
Yeah, Jordan looks a little bulkier too. So there's no question. Like we said, it's the first time since 2017 where spring camp, DeAndre Francois, we knew he was quarterback 1, right? So we finally we don't have to worry about QB competition throughout the spring going into fall camp. But I agree. But if you listen to, the reports last year, Tate Rodemaker was doing pretty well in practice, but we all know what happened when he got in the games, right? So it is something that I'd like to see. I need to see more than Duffy, running over a couple tackling dummies and making a pass to think he's really got it clicking. I do think you might still want to look at getting in a quarterback with some experience to sit behind Travis because, again, we don't know how healthy he will be. And Tate and Duffy, I mean, there's a lot of hope and positivity, but yeah, I know what I've seen out of Tate, and it takes a really special freshman to come onto campus and really turn heads 4 days in. So I agree with you. I'm kind of pumping the brakes on what's going on behind Travis right now, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know. I'm skeptical there. Hopefully it doesn't matter. Hopefully Travis just plays all 12 games and we don't even need to kind of bring somebody else in, or, maybe we can give some people some mop-up duty at the end of games. But yeah, I am somewhat skeptical there of the high praise they were getting 4 days into practice. Like, there's just not been enough stuff go on to know.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think we'll know at all. Even after fall camp, we probably won't know. What I'll be most interested in is to see who goes in Duquesne when, Florida State is up by 40 points in the fourth quarter, which, if you can't get a backup in for garbage time against Duquesne, then we're in for a long season. So who will be that first guy off the bench? I think it'd probably be Tate, unless Duffy just really wows between now and the start of the season. But again, that's a decision Mike Norvell, he's probably a little nervous about, because you feel really good with Jordan Travis. You were 5-2 with him over his last 7 starts, but we know what happened when Travis was not available last year, and it was not pretty.
So I think it'll be Tate. I don't really foresee, unless we bring a transfer in, I don't really foresee any situation where they bring Duffy in that Duquesne game, unless there's like an injury or you have to. With the way the red shirts work, I think you'd like to play him in 4 games or less this year. I also don't know that he'd be ready anyway. And so I think it'd be Tate at the end of that game. I would not want – I think with the way the 4-game red shirts work, I don't want to blow a game there when it doesn't matter. What if you need him later? What if Jordan gets hurt and Tate comes in and throws like 3 interceptions in a row or something crazy, then I'd rather use him for a later game. So I hope it's not Duffy. I'm also okay just continuing to leave Travis in the game and just running the ball every single time against Duquesne once you're up 40. So that's fine. Just kind of run the clock out. Good problem to have, being up 40. But I hope that's not the case. I hope we're not bringing Duffy in that early. Offensive line with actual depth for the first time in God knows how long, 2013. So it's been almost a decade. Real depth. We're really hyping this offensive line. But with how bad it's been for the last 10 years, 9 years, 8 years, however you want to kind of look at that, with how bad it's been, I feel like just an average offensive line. Like if I told you Florida State's going to have the 40th best offensive line in college football this year, so I guess that'd be above average, right? Because average would be right around 65.
Yeah, you take that all day.
Top 40 offensive line. I mean, I wouldn't even think twice about that. And it has a chance to be even better than that. Obviously, the transfer in Lyles, Gibbons back for his second year, really anchoring the center of that line. What are your thoughts on the offensive line this year? Just kind of the depth and what goes into it.
I think the common theme for the past 4 or 5 years has been, okay, I think we can get by with what we have on the starting front 5, right? But if someone goes down, we're going to be in trouble. And, go back to Willie's first year, Landon Dickerson goes down against Virginia Tech, and the offense, which was actually moving the ball pretty well in that game, just completely fell apart just with Landon Dickerson going down. So if you have an offensive line that you like the front 5 or the first 5, but if only one of them goes down, you're screwed and you're in trouble. And I don't think that's the case this year. I think they're going to have solid 8, 9, potentially 10 guys that they can at least trust to go in there and not just, let people run right by you all day and, not even make an impact at all, to where you're not forced to rely on a larger tight end to come in and help block as well, because you don't trust your tackles. So I think the depth is there. And again, it sounds like we're hyping the offensive line up, but like you said, we're not. We're just thinking if this line is average, with the depth they have and they stay relatively healthy, again, we're not in a position where one injury is just going to screw you over for the entire season until you start playing musical chairs across the offensive line where you got guys playing out of position. I'm excited about the offensive line in depth because I do think last year, even the year before to an extent, they did a pretty solid job in run blocking, right? The pass pro has kind of been the issue. But if they can get the pass pro figured out, I like what they have, but what they've shown in Norvell's scheme with the run blocking. But yeah, I'm not going to say I'm excited about it, but I'm cautiously optimistic that this line will not be a weakness, a glaring weakness, which we've seen far too often in recent years.
Well, and what I'd also hope is that as we continue to not only get depth, we do a little bit better job with, and some injuries are freak things that you cannot avoid. But, man, can we get to a point where we're not getting injured? We don't have offensive linemen getting injured every other game, and we don't have guys missing. Like, it has the strength program, as Coach Storms again, freak things. You step on a guy's ankle, which, things like that happen with the offensive line. You kind of understand them, right? But are we to a point now with the program that we're not having some of those things happen? Where our strength and conditioning is at a point, we've got enough guys who are doing things the right way, and we're taking care of their bodies and things like that, that we're not even having to worry as much about the depth. Now, injuries are going to happen, right? 2013 year, we kind of made it. We're still paying for that. But, that would be another hope. Not only is the depth nice, it's nice to have some pieces that can come in and step in if they need to, but Florida State's going to do some of the things that we hope they can do this year. Let's just kind of avoid the injuries. let's not rely on the guys in the too deep. So yeah, but I think that could be big. We didn't talk about this, but just in looking at the team and looking at the size and depth, thoughts around the strength program, Coach Storms, and that side of things, where we are right now with them.
Yeah, and you got to think when Norvell came here his first year, he didn't have an off-season workout program. You had kids that everyone was basically at home, and a lot of these kids didn't have access to a gym or even a weight set. They were saying just find a hill and run up it, right? So that 2020, they did not have any weight program at all. So 2021 last year was kind of the first time a lot of these kids got to go through the tour of duty and the drills the way that Coach Norvell and Coach Storms want them to go. So this year, you have a lot of people coming back. We talked about 11th most production. So all these guys went through tour of duty last year and the offseason strength training program. I do think it's making a difference because I mentioned it at the top of the show, that we had guys in recent years that you look at them, you're like, that's not an ACC level player just by looking at them. Now you look more similar to an NC State or a Pitt from last year than you do. You're still a ways behind Clemson. But you're looking like a respectable college football team. So I think Coach Storms has done a great job. And like I said, I think this, 2020 wasn't even you can't even count that year as an offseason workout. So this year will be the second one for most of these guys. And it looks like they kind of really bought in.
So looking at some skill positions, it looks like there are a couple of people that have stood out in the running back room. Benson's got a ton of praise. I know there were a lot of questions and concerns about that take, just because of the fact that he came off of injury and didn't have a lot of production, and people were like, man, what in the world are they thinking doing this, taking this kid? We're early. We're making a lot of observations from not very many days, but there seems to be some real smoke around Trey Benson being, pretty legit, fastest kid out there. We need to see when pads come on and against opponents, and about a month from now in Indo for the spring game, or a little less now. But he's been a name that has certainly stood out. What are your thoughts on Trey Benson, and then what other standouts are you kind of hearing about?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing with Benson is, remember when he came on his visit here, when he committed, he was still in a knee brace. And I think that freaked a lot of the fan base out that, he's just on a visit, he's not doing any physical activity. He's still wearing a knee brace. But like you mentioned, the folks that have been out there have been able to observe him. He looks like one of the fastest guys, and he's built pretty thick. He's a good looking running back. We'll see again, like you said, with pads coming on. I know they've had a couple practices with shells, and then they most recently had one with pads. They're not tackling; they're just doing thud right now, so they're not bringing players to the ground, which is very smart because you don't want to risk injuries in spring that could, hang over into the fall. But yeah, Benson's a guy that definitely, from everyone who's been out there, sounds like he's really having a good time. Micah Pittman is standing out. I saw him pop up on the 247 practice report observation the past few days. One name that's really standing out is Courtney Alexander, the tight end, quarterback turned tight end. Apparently, he looks like a physical freak out there. Now, I don't know if he's got the body shape to, be a full-time tight end right now. He might be more of a
Brian Courtney.
Brian Courtney. Sorry, why did I put Alexander there? That was a say. So Brian Courtney, the who's again, and he's been mentioned by pretty much every outlet that's been out there. So that tends to happen. So those you don't know, typically when the beat gets out on the sidelines to watch practices, there's downtime where they'll go talk to each other to compare notes. So it might just be one of those things where it's like, hey, you seeing this guy over here? And then everyone kind of keeps an eye on him because everybody wants to find that one diamond in the rough and say, hey, this is, the king of spring. Watch out for him in the fall camp. So I don't know if that's kind of where this hype is coming, but I do think enough people have seen it and taken notice about him, from the offensive side of the ball. I'm excited to see him. Johnny Wilson, people were concerned, like, is he more of a tight end?
Like Johnny Wilson, yeah.
Put it receiver, but from all accounts, he looks exactly like a tight end. His weight distribution is really good. Body's in shape. So, I think a lot of the newcomers, everyone we just mentioned, I think is a newcomer between Pittman, Wilson, Benson. It's exciting. But again, we have to stress this consistently. It's only been a few days. They're not even tackling right now. They've only had one practice in full pads. So it's really tough to say for certain, any, hardcore takes on any direction.
Yeah. Defense is pretty new look at a lot of positions. Obviously, you lose a couple of guys that had a massive impact in Thomas and Johnson. Verse over there on the defensive line. Been battling out with Briggs and who else at the end? Thanks, William. Go Knowles. Battling out with Briggs and not just kind of an instant guy, like an instant plug-in, going to be the surefire thing. We were talking with Josh about that at that defensive end position. Maybe just the fact that he's kind of learning things and is not been in the system as long, because you McClendon, there it is, Leonard Warner as well. What are your thoughts on Verse not just being the clear number one guy? You just think it's because it's early, he will be there?
I think that's a great thing that because again, if he came here thinking that way and now he has guys like Briggs and McClendon that he's pushing, and he might be saying, oh, this might not be the easy starting job I thought I was going to get, because McClendon, he's kind of the wild card to me, because we know Briggs is solid, right? He's been solid inside, moving outside. I think you're going to get consistent play from him. He's not going to be a freak Jermaine Johnson type deal, but I think he's someone you can trust. And then it's going to be McClendon or Verse, because it sounds like McClendon, maybe a light bulb's kind of come on for him. Excited to see again. The spring game will be a lot of fun, because I do think for the first time in years, you have enough depth to have an actual spring game and not look at a player make a play and be like, okay, that was nice, but look who he was going up against. I think you're going to have enough players to really get an idea. But yeah, McClendon and Briggs are really pushing Verse, who many of us thought, maybe we put too much hype on him when he came in, being the number one defensive end in the transfer portal. But it's good to see that other players are pushing him, and competition's only going to be positive for this team in practice.
Yeah. Bethune's come in and made a pretty good impact. Obviously, Deloach is probably your leader of that group at the linebacker position, but Bethune's come in and done some good things, already made some noise, gotten some people talking about him as well. In the secondary, obviously the news around Brownlee, yeah. The name was being held out of my mind. The news around Brownlee, see what I did there, is not great. The fact that he hasn't been in practice, and not really a lot of news as to why. Obviously been rumors around NIL stuff. But a secondary that is kind of deep. And if you were to lose Brownlee, which hopefully that's not the case, I don't think it'd be the end of the world. But some cool names. Azariah Thomas is somebody like so I'll say this. When I'm going to, pat myself on the back here a little bit. When Josh and I were on the Spaces, for those of you who don't know, we obviously do FSU Spaces. Right now it's like Monday and Friday. I'm sure we'll do something midweek this week, because we just can't quit the habit. But when we do Spaces on Twitter around noon, somebody asked, like, what's the freshman you think will have the biggest impact on the team this year? And he said McCall. I said Thomas. I like McCall too. Don't get me wrong. But I just Thomas just is like he's just like a baller, man. Like, he just is that guy. And so, like, I pat myself on the back there. Like, it seems like he's having a good spring, getting in there, making some impact. Obviously, you love the fact that you have Jones back. in the backfield, in the secondary back there. You hope some other guys can kind of step up as well. Omar Graham's been a name that you wrote down and has been popping up and stuff. But thoughts on the secondary?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Greedy Vance is in here now too. He had a pretty rough first practice or two, but sounds like he really turned things around after that. Jamie Robinson's he's the alpha dog, right? I think he's going to be the leader, not just the secondary of the defense. I think him and Deloach are kind of going to be the guys you look to lead this team based on how Deloach finished last season. You just have so many bodies in the secondary that I'm confident you're going to be able to find 4 or 5 guys for any given down. Dent, we'll see. He's kind of flashed. I think he had a pick 6 the second day of practice. So that'll be interesting. You got Cooper back there still, Knowles. You have no shortage of blue chip talent in the secondary. It's just getting them to buy into the defense here and produce, because they weren't terrible last year. But, obviously it sticks out. Jacksonville State, that last play, you have to play 60 minutes every single down, and you definitely have the bodies, I think. It'd be interesting to see, like a Greedy Vance, who had a rough first day or two, but seems to have really turned it around since then. You have a lot of people competing, and it goes back to that defensive end job. Competition's only going to make everyone better, because think if Jared Verse had come here and McClendon hadn't taken that next step, do you think Verse is really going to be pushing that hard every single play if he knows there's nobody behind him that can take that starting job? Well, in the secondary, everybody knows. I think Jamie Robinson's your kind of locked in guy, and you're going to build around him.
For sure. So it's exciting. Obviously, this hasn't really come out, or I don't think much has kind of been said around this. That'd be a good one, William. Demore Tate can win a job. For sure. We'll take anybody. Yeah. I mean, and that's the biggest thing is, like, last couple of years, you've had guys that just had to play. Like, if you're good or bad, it doesn't matter. You got to play. We don't have enough depth. You're out there. Let's go. Anybody that wins a job this year, it's because they went out and won a job, right? Whoever ends up being the number 1 running back, whether it's Ward, Toafili, Benson, whoever wins the starting wide receiver positions, because they went out and won them. There's enough depth there. We don't just have to, you don't just like, we got to put a guy out there so we have 11 guys on the field. So I agree. Like, whoever wins these jobs, with the exception of, there are guys they're going to be back there. Like, Robinson's got a spot. Deloach has a spot. Bethune probably has a spot. Lundy, linebacker's pretty solid there. Defensive line, mostly solid. We'll see who kind of like starts and who's rotational at defensive end. But we know that Lovett and Cooper are going to start at the inside. Yeah. A lot of the offensive line is kind of short up, quarterback short up. But yeah, anybody that's winning a job right now in through spring or through fall camp, good, because they didn't just get put in because we needed another body there. It's because they went out and won a job.
And I think we'll have a really good idea, TJ, after the spring into the summer, see who hits the portal, because there's going to be people leaving the team after spring, and seeing who leaves from the secondary or other positions. That's going to tell you all you need to know.
Yeah. What also is exciting and what's a lot of fun and what hasn't been mentioned a ton, but what I am kind of looking forward to is kind of once we hear the reports on how the special team stuff looks. Because I know Pittman's been kind of surprising people out at wideout or whatever, but I'm excited to kind of see when he starts to get his hand on some punt returns and starts being able to take stuff back. Hopefully we see something exciting in the spring on that, kind of get Doak riled up and fired up with a big return. Obviously, I'd rather see it in
well, they're not going to do any punt returns in the spring game, but as long as he just catches it, the crowd will go nuts.
That's what I mean.
Catch the ball.
Just get your hands on it. Don't let it bounce 30 yards behind you. That'll get me on my feet. But no, like I said, I don't even really want to see it in Doak. I want to see it in the Superdome against New Orleans. If you gave me a pick right now, what game I want there to be a punt return touchdown in, it'd be LSU without a doubt. I'd take that over Clemson, because I think we could have a punt. Okay, I don't want to be super negative. I know we've been positive for about 29 minutes here, but I think we could have a punt return touchdown against Clemson and then still potentially lose that game. We had a fumble return touchdown against them and still lost. Yeah. But I think if you have a punt return touchdown against LSU, you're going to win the game. I think that's
seven points, because you're probably looking at like a 4.5 to a 6.5 point spread in their favor, I'm guessing.
4 or 5.
That erases the spread.
Yeah, kind of makes it a. Yeah, so give me that. Give me that. Let's roll. So anyway, no pressure, Pittman. That's what I want. Okay, pretty heavily reliant on newcomers. We're talking about Versus, talking about Bethune, standouts. Okay, teams on spring break, no practice for a week. This is normal. This is not something that is like new at all. This is usually how things fall. Thoughts on having spring break in the middle of camp? Or, I mean, I don't love it. I do not love it, but there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it just is what it is. Sucks, but you're not going to have your spring, go through until like May 1st, right? Like you need your spring to be wrapped up. Like you're not going to move your spring game back to your spring game would have to go to the 23rd if you wanted to avoid this. You wanted to be able to have the excitement, the momentum around, spring starting and visits last weekend. So it sucks, but it just is what it is. Your thoughts kind of the same?
Yeah, and end of April at Florida State's typically the end of the semester. You're getting ready for final exams, so you don't want to bleed it too far into that. I was listening to your space with Josh Newberg and with Brian McFadden. He had mentioned he doesn't like the idea because he used to love just knocking it all out at once. I think it's what I'll be most interested to see is that first practice back. Who Norvell is praising, who he's not, because it's really easy. A lot of these kids are going to go home. Some of them will stay in town. Some of them are going to go over to Panama City. Who's going to put in the work every day to where that first practice back in pads, you're just not gassed and out of shape? Because I think it'll tell a lot about the character of these players, like who takes this week seriously and who decides to take the week off. Because I can tell you, if you take the whole week off, you're not going to be ready for that next spring practice that starts. So again, like you said, it's pretty unavoidable. That's not a Florida State unique position or problem. It's going to happen all over the country. I don't like it, but I get it. But I do think it's a good opportunity for some of these older guys to, show back up on that first day of practice coming back and not missing a step. And you may look around and see some guys kind of, gasping for air. And that's going to tell you kind of who took this spring break seriously and who didn't.
Yeah. Tough to avoid. Kind of is what it is. But I mean, what are you gonna do about it? Harlan doesn't like it either. So like to make that 0 for 3, we don't like it, but not much we can do here. What do you know? I think that's about it for football stuff. We've been about 30 minutes. We're gonna wrap up with some kind of around the horn, some other FSU athletic stuff. Before we do that, we interviewed on Thursday night, Coach Stud, head coach, FSU swimming. And you had a hot take about something. Was it the Buddy Boeheim situation? Okay, yeah, that's what it was. Or you said you had an opinion on it. We were going to hear it out.
Oh.
And the business called this a teaser because before we hear that, I want to bring up Garnet and Gold. Garnet and Gold has been family owned and operated since the mid-70s. It's the last locally owned FSU store in Tallahassee. Fanatics is owned by Gators. Let's not spend money there. All the major chains are owned out of other places. Garnet and Gold has 3 locations in Tallahassee and a full e-commerce shop. You can go to garnetandgold.com. As I mentioned earlier, you can use No Slaw, NOSLAW. That's good for everybody but those FSU swimming guys that we spoke with a couple of weeks ago and put a video out on the other day. No Slaw at garnetandgold.com. You can get 20% off. I tweeted a bunch of pictures of hats. I love stuff. Oh, it's in the other room. I love stuff with the state of Florida on it. And then it says the word state in it. That's like one of my favorite logos. I mean, obviously I love just like the traditional, logo that we have. I love stuff that's got the state of Florida and the word state in it. But whatever you like, they've got it. They've got the old logo. I know some of you guys go crazy for that. They've got the new logo. Use code NOSLAW at garnetandgold.com. You can get those hats that I was posting yesterday for less than $20. You can't find that deal anywhere else. You're not getting those hats for less than $20. If you want a new Harlan was talking about, he's got some buddies that get new polos every year for when the season starts. You get 20% off a polo. That's like $15 off. Like that's a really good deal. So anyway, garnetandgold.com, 20% off, code NOSLAW. They support the boosters. They've employed thousands of FSU students over the years. Support a local owned business. Garnet and Gold is your spot. Also, we had a giveaway. We'll post this on our Instagram as soon as I get off of here today. But our winner for the giveaway with Garnet Gold is $25 gift card. Congratulations to Jen, Mel, Twin, Jennifer. I will shoot you a DM. We'll hook you up with Garnet Gold and get you your gift card out. You can use that online and get you something good. You can still use the code. You can use code No Slaw. So that $25 gift card is really like a $30 gift card. So you're welcome. So shout out Jen, Mel, Twin on Instagram. Congrats on your gift card. All right. Basketball season is officially over. Actually, the NIT is happening. Will we not make the NIT?
I think there's a decent shot we'll get a bid. I don't know if we will accept it.
Just because the guy's injured?
I think this season's ready to be over. I'm not sure.
If you're a Power 5, you gotta go. How do you turn that down?
Yeah, I think the only reason you do it is that, an ode to people like, the Weatherman, Harrison Prieto, and some of those other guys that it would be their last time getting to play. You still just don't have the bodies, not the depth. And I think this team, especially after Syracuse, that game, the team that's like the third or fourth time in the past month where they've just thrown their hands up and flat out quit. So frustrating to watch it. And luckily I didn't have to watch the whole thing. But as I would switch over to my watch ESPN tab at work, like every time I watch it, there's just no effort. I got vibes of when I went up to Chapel Hill and before I know it, it's like 22-0. Char Hill's in the lead. I thought we did a better job of not quitting in that game than we did in this one. This game, we definitely quit. Yeah.
This game, I think, don't care.
Yeah. Well, North Carolina, that was more of just North Carolina had a 50-point lead. They're like, all right, let's go play the walk-ons. But yeah, disappointing. So we'll see what happens. I'd say there's probably a 50-50 shot they get a bid. They'd likely be going on the road, though, as a higher seed in the NIT instead of being able to host a game at the Tuck. We'll see. I think there's some soul searching that the program has to do. I don't think it's, this is what you're going to expect the next few years. I definitely think you have some pieces you can work around. Matthew Cleveland just won the 6th Man of the Year award. Be interesting to see if he comes back. It'd be really unfortunate if we went to the NIT, he had like a 30-point game and said, hey, I think I'm ready for the NBA now. We'll see. I don't know. It's the season again as a whole disappointing, but again, a lot of things out of their control. At one point, Florida State was 7-2 in first place in the ACC. Then they just got hit with injury after injury. Raekwon Evans, had the family issues. Everything that could have gone wrong did. But, for Florida State, this program the past few years, they haven't had a whole lot go wrong. So it's almost like 4 years of karma just catching up at once.
Yeah, and I actually just looked up some, I didn't even know this existed, but I looked up some like NIT bracketology, and they don't have us as a seed there. So
17 and 14, I mean, you're fringe bubble NIT, and especially with that Syracuse game being the most recent thing.
Right, yeah. If you'd have beaten Syracuse
exactly,
and then
kept it close,
played Duke really well,
yeah.
Maybe you have a shot, but yeah, I don't even think we're going to get a bid there. So, well, that's frustrating, but yeah, it's a punch to the gut, if to put it literally.
Oh yeah.
Thoughts on Buddy Boeheim?
So there's a lot going on here, right? If the refs had seen it happen, reviewed it, and called a flagrant 2 and ejected him like they should have, Syracuse still rolls. Then there's no need to suspend Buddy Boeheim for the Duke
It was
game.
early. It was early. Maybe that changes some things. I think it was a 7-point game when that happens, and I think it snowballed from there. Because if your best player gets kicked out,
mm-hmm.
and we, say we knock down the 2 free throws and then score a bucket, and it's a 3-point game at that point. 3-point game could have gone either way, right?
Yeah,
he played well the first 10 minutes.
Not particularly.
Well, we kept it close the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, but anyways, I mean, I had more issue with his dad after the game trying to defend him. Jim Boeheim, who I'm actually a huge fan. I
thought you were gonna say that you didn't think. I thought you were gonna take Boeheim's side on this.
No, my dad grew up in Syracuse, New York. He was a lifelong Syracuse fan. I grew up as a Syracuse fan, a big fan of Jim Boeheim. But and again, he's talking about his son, so you have to take it somewhat with a grain of salt. But he basically tried to blame Wyatt Wilkes. He's like, well, he was down there. The guy pushed him 2 times. He's like, you can't just let him sit there and push you around. And then a reporter had his phone out after the game, asked a question. He's like, I'm watching the clip on ESPN right now. no, he punched him in the stomach. He's like, he cocked back and punched him. It's very intentional. And he's like, well, that's your version of events. I just told you. He's like, I watched the play. That's my version of events. So I went back and watched it. Well, all he did is box the guy out on a shot. Literally, that's all he was doing. And you see Boeheim turn around. You see his elbow go backwards and then go right into the gut. So it wasn't swinging arm. So I thought it was, a pretty poor apology by Buddy. But, when your dad's up there defending you like that, Jim Boeheim probably wrote Buddy's apology for him.
Yeah, well, he enabled him, right? And it's not like Jim Boeheim to not, take credibility or take ownership of a massive mistake. So, frustrating because he definitely did punch the guy right in the stomach.
Yeah.
I like Jay Billis, but screw Jay Billis too, because he absolutely deserved to be suspended for the next game.
So
it's very similar. Yeah. Oh, you have a take on that too?
On Jay, yeah. So his whole career, everyone calls him Jay Bias, right? They say he's a huge Duke homer. I actually don't think he's that big of a huge homer. I think he does a pretty good job.
I think he does a pretty good. I think he does a good job, like Kirk does with Ohio State games.
But I think he saw this as an opportunity, knowing the suspension had already happened, knowing Syracuse was playing Duke. He's like, let me stand up for Boeheim here in Syracuse. That way, it looks like I'm being completely objective. I think part of that had something to do with it, because his logic made no sense. He's like, yeah, you're right. It was wrong, but the refs missed it. They missed the chance to review it. Like, okay, how many times do we see in the NFL someone gets fined on Tuesday after the game for a play they weren't called on? Like, it still happened.
Yeah. That's why we review things like that. Like, if a ref, there's that just doesn't make any logical sense at all. Yeah. If you misfile your taxes, you will get a letter in the mail a couple of years later telling you misfiled this because you submit taxes, and then everyone that paid you, like your company that pays you, also submits taxes. Like, hey, this is how much I paid you, and it all checks and balances later, right? And if you misfiled, they're going to send you a letter and say, hey, you misfiled this. You owe us this amount of money. If you, in the NFL, if you spit in somebody's face and the refs miss it, and they have moved on, and they're a few plays later, you will get fined and you will get suspended later. Like this whole idea.
Was it Brandon Spikes who eye gouged the Georgia player at the bottom of the pile like 10 years ago, and then he got suspended? Even though it wasn't called. Light, I got 2 of those in a week this year.
It's frustrating. If you don't renew your registration, you may not get caught that day, but eventually they'll suspend your license. Like it all catches. Like this idea that like, oh well, we'd already moved on. Like. That's not how that works. You don't just, I don't know, it's just stupid. The play had already continued. And it's like, okay, what if he would have literally ripped his jersey off and punched him in the face and then like kept going? Like it was just ridiculous. Jay Billis is an idiot. And then he compared it to like, if you step out of bounds, the difference is that's a basketball, like that's a mistake, right? That's like against, that's a rule. It's not a malicious attempt. Like, again, if it had just been a hard foul, like if they'd have said, here's the difference. Let's say they would have called a foul on like a rebound or something. And then the ACC would have gone back later and said, you know what, that foul was a little bit rough. We're going to upgrade that to a flagrant 1. But they wouldn't do that the next day, right? Like if it was still a basketball play, right? Oh, well, that was a flagrant 1. So we're going to give Florida State 2 more free throws and add that to the score at the end of the game. The problem was it wasn't a basketball play, right? It would have been like, if they found out, it would have been the same thing if they'd have found out that he took testosterone or something, like he took some kind of performance enhancing drug after they found that out 2 days later, they would have suspended him going forward because you're not allowed to do that. Like, it's not it's not the same as stepping out of bounds or double dribbling.
Yeah.
Like Jay Billis is an idiot.
Yeah. So I have 2 final thoughts on this. One, Wyatt Wilkes, I get you're a laid back guy and probably want to, come off as a tough guy. You got to sell that. Right, you need to be down rolling, grabbing your gut until they say we need to go to the replay.
He even just said something to Coach Ham, like, "Hey, I just got punched in the stomach. Can they review that?"
Yeah, and
I get you don't want to be a snitch or whatever, but like you also just want to win the game. I mean,
because like you said, it was somewhat close at that time. Yeah, and you're getting your best player out of the game. And then the only other thing, I don't know if Anthony Polite saw it happen because he was right there. But the way it happened, if you weren't watching, I'm going to assume no, because if anyone on Florida State's team saw it in real time, I'm really disappointed they did not run get up in Boeheim's face. And I get things can escalate from there, but you got to defend your players. I can guarantee there's no way that, that 2017 Florida State team, someone could have done that to John Isaac, and, Trent Forrest just sits there and says, hey, no worries. So let's just keep playing. Like that was part of the fight of the team. And I'm not saying go push him, go punch the guy back. I'm saying that you got to let him know that's not okay. Or maybe the next time he goes to the lane, make it clean, but maybe I'm going to foul you a little harder this time. And you're going to think about, what you did. I didn't see the team really come to support him and defend him. But again, I don't know if anybody actually saw it in real time.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see that game when it happens again next year. If there's any, I know they wouldn't forget that on the diamond. Like he'd be getting thrown at the next year without a doubt.
Exactly.
So that'd be interesting. I mean, Boeheim would be gone. So fortunately he missed his last, career college game ever. And so suck it.
Yeah.
All right. Baseball off to a rough start against Wake Forest. They lost on Friday. Game yesterday was postponed to today. They'll play 2. Softball won both of their games on Friday. Shout out to a pretty impressive doubleheader win by the softball team to get that on Friday. They are starting. Actually, they just started like 10 minutes ago. So they started today at 1:00. Women's tennis is currently competing against Florida Gulf Coast University. They got the doubles point and are playing right now. Hopefully they can pull off the win there. Men's tennis literally just started against UNC, or they're just about to start, against UNC, kind of the same idea. That game at home, I believe. Yeah, that is in Tallahassee. Women's golf competing in the Valspar Augusta Invitational. They're currently in 3rd place. Moved up, started the day in 4th, currently in 3rd. Only 6 shots off the lead with about half the course to go. So maybe can find a way to get back in that. Ole Miss in 1st, South Carolina in 2nd, and then Florida State in 3rd. And then the big news of the weekend as we go around the horn. If I missed anything, check out doublefriesnoslaw.com. Mike Ferguson does a fantastic job of updating things there. But the biggest news of the weekend is Trey Cunningham wins a national championship with a new personal record of 7.38 seconds. That's the 11th fastest time in the history of the sport, and just 0.3 of a second off the collegiate record. I saw Laura Ryan from Australia, also on the FSU track team, is one. I need to look up real quick because I don't want to do disservice to this, but she claimed an All-American in her first time at the at the track national championships. So let me look it up real quick. Yeah, first time competing at the NCAA indoor championships. Laura Ryan as a first team All-American. So a good day on the indoor track yesterday. Trey wins a national championship. Laura wins a NCAA All-American trophy. I think that's it. That's kind of our around.
Did you see that video of Trey? Did you see the video?
I watched it live.
He was clear by that's a huge margin of victory for a race that short.
And he didn't even get off to a great start. Looks like he was kind of behind a couple of guys, but then he absolutely turned it on. And I was watching him. I was watching it live because it was on Watch ESPN, and I got the alert that he was just about to go, so I flipped it on real quick. Those are my favorite. When you can watch a 7-second national championship, like how much stress goes into a 4-hour national championship. I mean, you do. You've been there and seen it, but a 7. This was amazing. But I was watching him beforehand, and he just looked so cool and calm and collected. Yeah. But I was also just like, man, I wonder how he's doing on the inside, like how nervous he is. You just don't want to see. I mean, this was going to be the last thing he was ever going to run. Won 5 ACCs, but had never won this. And they asked him about getting the monkey off his back and everything else. But he's like, man, I hope he doesn't blow it, on this last chance he's ever got. And like you said, he was absolutely moving.
Well, when he was on here 2 weeks ago, he had, I believe, the 18th fastest time in the history of the sport. And now he has the 11th fastest time. And it's the first time he's ever ran a sub 7.4. He was moving. Yeah, shout out to him. Loved having him on the podcast. Go check that out if you guys want to. He was a really cool guy. Humble kid from Alabama. Parents went to Auburn in Alabama. He wanted to set his own path, and now he's a national champion at Florida State.
Yeah, really, really cool. Till Dog 12, we mentioned that. Raising Cane's putting a restaurant right across from Guthrie's. We must protect the gut box at all costs. Like I said, I reached out to their owner, not Raising Cane's. I reached out to Guthrie's owner. We welcome we welcome the competition. We are more than happy. It's like welcoming Miami into Tallahassee last year, right? Came in all cocky, thought they had something, came in as the favorite, and then had to go back down south with their tail tucked between their legs. We feel the same way about Raising Cane's coming to Tallahassee. There will never be another OG. Oh man,
Bert Kreischer wasn't looking for no Raisins Cane's when he was in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
He made a stop at Guthrie's and got about 4 gut boxes for himself.
So not worried about Raising Cane's. This will always be a Guthrie's podcast, and our tailgates will always be Guthrie's tailgates. So best of luck to Raising Cane's. I'm not like wishing for other people's failures or anything like that, but you come at the King, you better not miss. So putting that right across from Guthrie's, I feel like that's trying to make a statement, and we're gonna make one back. So shout out Guthrie's. That's all I got. Shout out Garden Gold. Shout out Guthrie's. Richie, you got anything before we get out of here? Oh, shout out the women's basketball team. Big night tonight with Selection Sunday. Obviously an exciting day for a lot of teams all across the country. Not so exciting for FSU's men's team, but fingers crossed that the women get a bid tonight. Had a really, really nice finish to the year after kind of a crazy season. Hopefully, and they really peaked at the right time. Hopefully it was enough beating Boston College that last game to get in. So shout out the women's basketball team. I'm staying up late. I know Richie will be in bed, but I'm staying up late to see if they get an invite or not. Looking at the bracketology right now for the women, right now it says that Florida State is in. So like I expect them to be in. I think it'd be kind of a shock if they weren't. In fact, it's got this ESPN bracketology has us as as one of the last 4 buys. So not playing in the play-in. So hoping, praying that we do get that. We do get in that. Richie, what kind of shout outs you got?
Yeah, and just real quick, there typically is more clarity on the women's bubble than the men's bubble just because of how it is every year. But my shout out, the man shot at 81 yesterday, so I'm not shouting out his performance on the course, but Brooks Koepka, we shared a video from a Double Fries Twitter account at Double Fries Pod. It's like a 4-minute video. If you want to get a good Sunday afternoon cry, go check it out. There was a young man with a rare form of childhood cancer. Brooks Koepka surprised him and brought his whole family out to the Wednesday practice round. He let him play with him, gave him a bunch of stuff, had him FaceTiming with Baker Mayfield, who's one of his favorite football players. So shout out Brooks Koepka. You didn't make us proud with the golf club this week, but you definitely made us proud with what you did with the Ethan there.
You're funny. Didn't make us proud with that.
Shot at 81. Come on.
It was a rough day yesterday. It was tough.
It was brutal.
He was emotional after meeting the kid.
So on Thursday and Friday, the course was playing like minus 179, I believe, but hole 17 was plus over 100. Like it was ridiculous. Ooh. What hole 17 was doing.
So, okay, cool. I think that's all I have for today. We're going to go watch some of these Florida State athletics. Bryce Hubbard on the mound for baseball, so going to go check that out. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'm thinking we have another pop-up this week, so I'll keep you updated. Stay tuned for that. If we don't, or for whatever reason, we will see you guys next Sunday. Until then, go Noles.